This is IBM Museum, and someone sent me a microchannel adapter to check out. And I wanted just to go through, get it on video, just almost as a documentation aspect, because I'm pulling out a MUL 60. I have no idea if I'm going to have to go through and pop a battery in there or run a ref disk or whatever else. I hope to be prepared, but let me get spun around here, get off that particular webcam picture. And as I said, this is a MUL 60. I I was sent an MFM adapter, MFM drive adapter, and just to validate whether this in fact works. I have this machine. There's the MUL 60, so the 8560 041 had the MFM drive. There's other or another submodel of the MUL 60 that had the ESDI drive, and then the low end Model 80, same effective case, also had the an MFM controller and drive in it. And so I wanted to do the baseline just to make sure that this system here, that the controller works, and just to go through and test that to see if it's operational and we can see what level it's at. I do even have some of these extra boards around too. This one looks in real good shape, and this is exactly the same as the adapter I received in the mail. And then, and these, I'll provide the link. These are the later versions of the MFM controller. This one here actually looks like it's got, I've got to go through and do some cleanup on it. I don't know if that's like insect, since the adapters are horizontal. If you have any of the back brackets and things like that, you can have like roaches or other insects get in there. I'm not sure if that's roaches. It almost looks like little bird droppings. A little bit of grime there, and of course dust. And I would go through and clean this up, and that might be a good time for me to clean this board up and to verify that it works after everything's clean. Now, speaking of clean, I do have brand new battery just in case I need it to go through and pop that in place. And of course, I've got a reference diskette made. I even have some spare Model 60 planers too. I've got even 4 of them here in the case. And as typical, this is stored on top of the MUL 60 I had, and I've put a piece of foam, and this is just how this foam, degrades. Looks like there's a chunk missing out of here. These things are it's almost like brownie, almost even like a half-cooked brownie mix. This is on the anesthetic wrap, and then this I've pulled out just a piece just to get it out of the way. We'll take a look at what I found here in a moment. If I have it any moment, I can probably go through and pull out the MUL 60 planers just to show what it ultimately looks like. And of course, I'll provide a link to that in the video description as well. These are effectively coin. You can use a coin to go through and to pull the side panel off. This does have a diskette drive. I do hope it's working condition. If not, I've got other diskette drives around I can certainly locate. And this looks to have the just the same as the other unit I've got as a backup. Looks to have the default 44 megabyte hard drive. that was on these models. Looks like everything is connected. Again, as just this foam, you can see the bits down here. I went through and I cleared that one piece up here, and I'm already getting this tar on me from just handling this stuff. And there's a big piece that just fell on top of the MFM controller board, since it's, you know, the default configuration is with these adapters in the upper slot. Oh my goodness, that is just and I don't think this stuff is conductive or anything else. IBM used it for airflows just to get a good seal on the side panel. I've got alcohol-based hand sanitizer. I do have some isopropyl alcohol as well. That appears like it's, I mean, it's mostly in the drive cage now. And as it is, these drive cages, you know, a single drive, it's to the rear of the unit. This is the front side of the unit here on this side. And of course, you can see all the connections I've got through. Haven't even powered this thing up though. And it's likely been some time since it has been powered on. If I do have to run the reference diskette, it's just I haven't switched over any files over to the diskette after making it. It looks like I've got a 3-COM board there and probably a multi-protocol adapter. If I have to go through and run the ref disk, I'll just go through and probably pull those to get a more basic configuration. And it does have this MFM controller, the ADF for this adapter on the Mol 60, Mol 50, you know, reference diskette. The reference diskette is shared between the Mol 50 and Model 60, but it has the base adapters. The configuration would come in, also has the ADF for the ESDI adapter as well, that is effectively unused in this case since we're using the MFM controller. And single drive also, you have the connectors side by side. This is for the second drive. If you were to have it, you've gone through, and the cable layout, IBM even has it to where there's the connector here for the and I think that's the control side. The 34 pin wide connector is the control, and then the shorter connector is the data connector, and that would go through. You'd have a separate cable that would go from the controller to that second drive. So just in this base configuration, let's go through. I've got the postcode reader. I don't have any tape up here. I've got it all accumulated in a bag, and I took it elsewhere for doing another job I have with one of the tapes that's in there. So I can't really tape that up, but I can go through and raise it up, basically, to show it. Let's get that foam off that battery. This stuff is horrible. And let's go ahead and power it on. I can go through and I can switch over the video capture if I have to. But we do see that postcode reader turning over. It's probably counting through and I have to make sure I don't get all my remotes all gunky. Standard 1 megabyte of RAM. Now we didn't get, that's great. I went through all that preparation for doing, for a reference diskette and things like that. It didn't have to do it. So it clearly loaded some stuff off of the hard drive. And I mean, this looks like some fairly neat stuff too. I mean, I'll have to go through and grab an image of this, and we'll just have to see what point this is. So this MFM controller and is working. The drive is working. And so all that kind of that preparation of going through and working through, I may get out my hand sanitizer right now and just try and get to cut some of the stuff off. And of course, this is not connected in. And it's interesting for it saying the token ring because it's got a 3COM. Oh, enter your user ID. Okay. No, I have no idea what all this is. I mean, I do have the keyboard connected to it and everything else. I would hope that, IBM token ring router. And this doesn't have, this has a, like a multi-protocol adapter, which could be connected into something. Oh, PC support 36. Cool. That'll be really helpful. All that hand sanitizer does, it made fingertips that were sticky before, just made everything sticky. That's cutting it a little bit. But I've got like super grip now. I could latch onto something and it just come to my hands. So I don't really want to go through and mess with anything anymore. And of course, I would prefer not to damage this image, of course. But I'm going to go through, and this merits some study at some later point. But I'm just going to go through and power off, because if I do anything like the user ID or anything like that, password or user ID, password, I just did enter. I don't think that's going to do anything. Okay. Okay. And system 36 not responding. We'll have to go through and tie this in. I've got some system 36s I need to pull out and patch in through that, probably through that multi-protocol adapter. Okay. Escape to exit. I don't know if there's any way to go through control break or escape. Yeah, let's terminate batch job. So that gets us back to DOS. I mean, that's, what's the version of DOS that we have? 3.30. It came with the PS2s. So we're to the DOS side of things. Let's do, there's probably lots of content. Okay. Let's go back to the root directory. See what's there. Wow. Pac-Man EXE at the end. Let's do a directory pause. One page at a time. It's got some 5250 directory. PC tools. Looks like some worksheets, WK1. And I don't know at the time if what we want to do with that auto exec. I probably would prefer to comment out anything in the we can take a look at what the auto exec bat and config says, because I'd like to go through and just boot to DOS and have the kind of a we see that I think there's a backup for the config sys. There's also like a save. There's we can go through and kind of look. Yeah, there's auto exec back already. So we'll have to come up with another name because I want to get this to where it just boots to MS-DOS, not without where it doesn't do all the loading otherwise, so we can at least know that we have a good that we're not messing with the image, even with this if this controller turns out to be kaput. So we're going to go through, we're going to examine. I mean, I don't know why I'm going through and doing edit because we're not going to have edit with this version. Let's just see what the auto exec.bat looks like. Okay. And let's see what the config sys looks like. Get a period in the right place. Okay, so we want to save those contents. Even though I've preserved it on video now, I want to go through and preserve that. And I was looking also for anything that necessarily may be, if it's loading any other drivers that we'd necessarily, or like a DASD driver or something like that, that maybe to correct for potential errors and things like that, or IBM issued those. I don't see any of that. So we're going to go through and just do a rename auto exec dot bat, excuse me. We're going to call it I'm just going to go through and actually name it as this, S36. That'll be an easy way to distinguish it. We're going to go through and we're going to rename config dot sys, not sus. And we're going to rename that the same way, config dot S36. Okay. And we're going to do, in fact, interesting. We talked about the clock. We didn't have to replace the battery, the configuration battery. That's not correct time. This is 1. It's going to be turning over to 1 o'clock here. Let's see what date this thing thinks it is. Now, as far as I know, DOS 3.3. Yeah, it's the default. So that's great. We didn't lose any config. Let's go through and let's set the date just because we can. And notice it's a 4-digit date, so hope we're good. So date, that's cool. Time, and all we're doing the time for is just to make sure that we're once I power it back on years in the future of that the time is correct. We hear that. It's a nice little sound for this. It's not too noisy, and I'm sure that foam, besides an air seal, also is a little bit of acoustic baffling as well, that mutes the sound and things like that inside the case. We didn't go through. We didn't even have to. In fact, let's go through just to validate everything. Let's go through and make sure that our diskette drive, okay, So it's a good thing we didn't have to go through and do that. I guess that we just do a abort. It's a good thing that I'll just leave that hanging there, but it's a good thing that we didn't have to go through and run the reference diskette. And I'm hoping I'm not going to mess up anything in testing this controller. But let's go through. Let's get switched back. I won't even see the last. Okay, so 72 is the last reference, or excuse me, the last postcode at the end of the sequence. And so a lot of time for moving these things, there was, in fact, I should have looked at the park utility just to make sure if there's a utility there that present on the drive for. I can't use my little screwdriver. The thumb screw is a little bit tight. I will get out a penny or dime as appropriate here. Penny. Okay, yeah, that was a little tight. So, little even coating of dust, and chips aren't really warm or anything like that. I'll go through and set that there. We see the original Panasonic batteries there. And so going through this looks cleaner than what that controller that I pulled out. Exactly the same. The thought is, I mean, I don't have to run the reference diskette if I have a functional and I don't have to change any configuration. If I'm doing like with like swap, I don't have to run a reference diskette. Everything, as long as everything works properly. Okay. So just that back of the adapter really didn't do. And of course, I didn't move any of the cable clamps there. Holds that all in the right position. Okay. And we are seated real good. And apologize for any of the phase difference during that whole sequence with the camcorder and the webcam both. Okay. Heard different noises. Okay, 1790. That is a hard drive error. And all we did was swap the controller. Before it gets any further, that's a bad controller. So we know what's going on with that one. Of course, this is the original. I want to go through the one that I don't necessarily need to clean. And sometimes you want to be careful because, you won't want a situation um, where it's the controller and drive are matched in some way. And for these sorts of adapters, everything being equal level, yet back of the back bracket just doesn't slip in there quite the way. So in case I didn't keep enough of a running commentary there, and you might be able to see, I'm not doing enough work in switching my scenes here, but I've gone through and I've placed in the adapter that I had as a spare, the one that looks clean, and to go through and test out that to make sure that that works. Okay. Heard better sounds that time. Okay, and since we don't have an autoexec.bat, okay, held the time and data course for that brief instance of being off. I'll have to check where that battery's at as far as a charge level, but looks like, I mean, that's one of the original types. Really great that I know everything that's here. There may be some routine I can run off camera before I take this thing off the bench to save that configuration away and go through, because I don't have that diskette drive. I'm gonna have to work with that if I'm to run any sort of reference diskette or anything like that. So we've seen here that my spare controller, and again, I probably want to go through and later on I'll clean the other one. I'm going to retain it. I mean, it's an unknown condition or being dirty like that. I'd prefer to hold on to that one. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to trade back this adapter that's running right now. And I'll be able to keep my Mall 60 original for the adapter that came in. These three are all the same versions. And I probably should have prepared more for the browser capture and things like that of showing the pages. Let me pause and get prepared for that. Okay, and here is the MFM and ESDI microchannel controllers. There's an early MFM controller listed first, and that's not the one that we have here. A little bit of difference between we have this later version, and I can go through, we'll get it. Let's go through. pull that down. Okay. And I'll go through and let me get the internal webcam cut off in that instance. So this is the bad board that I was sent, and looks visibly complete. You know, there's things like the crystals and stuff like that that can get damaged and fail, but everything looks pretty good. But that's that later adapter. I'll provide a link in the video description, and so we'll get prepared for that. I'll get the knowledge that's the bad adapter. This is the replacement adapter that I'm going to send back that way. And I want to go through just to kind of show, at least I can get the top one out of here fairly easily. I just want to show a little bit of the Model 60. And I don't go through and jostle these around a whole bunch. I need to get to the point where I have them in separate bags, a little bit of padding between. And we're now in the months, so that we're not as, at least the air has a little bit of moisture as it is in there. But this is the Model 60 planer. Even got the SIMs on there, the 256 kilobit SIMs. 4 of them make a megabyte. That was a real common configuration, just like this motherboard has behind me. And 286 CPU, 10 megahertz. Runs this is for the numeric coprocessor, an 8287, and it runs that at that full 10 megahertz speed, the same as the CPU in this microchannel design. Power connector at the top. It's got the keyboard controller. There's our VGA chip kind of in the center of things. And our ROM BIOS chips, 4 of them. And in an odd and even for both the E and the F segment, this does have the A BIOS from IBM as well, that advanced BIOS, and also the C BIOS or compatibility BIOS. And all the 16-bit microchannel slots. This different one is the, referred to that AVE end on, or auxiliary video extension, or the known as an 8514/A slot for that, primarily for that the 8514 controller and attached display that was vector graphics. The reason it has the auxiliary video extension is to communicate with the base video being VGA on the planer in this case. So that is that's a Model 60. I won't lay this on top of that anti-static bag. I'll get it back inside here in a moment just to get it protected. I'll go through. I have some dusting to do for the controller board that was in there. This will go back in place. And as I say, I've got the swap identified that I'll do. And that's one-for-one troubleshooting. That's a good way to go through. Break the issue in half. He was having problems with his running his hard drive, even though it's a slightly different model. Same capacity, but the geometry was a little bit different. But that goes through and gets it identified that it, at least, the controller being bad gets it further. If he still has trouble from there, it could still be his drive. but getting through and fixing, part, going through and verifying that the whether the controller works, and then you just move on, and the next step is verifying whether the drive works. So let me get back on the screen here, and I'll go through and power this down in a moment, treat it gentle, go through and, in fact, let's go through, just because we can. Let's look at whether we have any kind of and I'm just giving it wildcards for, okay. So not in the root directory. We didn't see that in any of the, of course, in the autoexec, there's not an effective thing to shut down for a batch file that's typically automatically executed. But people, a lot of time, they went through and they created a, or they had a batch file they could do that would park the heads and things like that. And I don't have the pass statement in that. I don't have any auto exec bad. That's why it prompted me again for the date, time, and date on boot. So it doesn't show the path I'm in, even though I changed directory to the DOS directory. Again, we're going to do a park. And it was typically like a park.com or something that there's also a utility that was on the diskette, the reference diskette too, to go through and park the heads as if that, that model of system had a drive that would need to effectively park the heads. But my diskette drive is bad. I got a good reference diskette, so it doesn't look like there's anything to park the heads there. But at least I tried. I know I have utilities like that, because certainly we want to examine this drive. This drive looks like it has some interesting stuff on it. I'll want to go through and archive all that content and kind of analyze a little bit more on what exactly is going on there, because it does look like a multi-protocol adapter. So this system, going through and getting that foam cleaned up and stuff like that, can be an effective project on its own to examine a little bit more later on and maybe come up with an environment to use it in, and go through and document the adapters and things like that that are present in the setup that's the configuration that's there. So I'm kind of glad for all that we got a good video. Veered off in a different direction, a little bit of preparation on setup. Didn't have to do that, but always good to do that. And we really would have encountered a lot more trouble if we had to run the reference diskette. So I'm glad for that. But if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and click on that like button, please. Subscribers are growing. It looks like I just went over 1,200 subscribers, and that is great to hear. I think that's a little bit from the live stream that I did this last Saturday, or watched a live stream and participated in chat for examination of those the 7496 executive workstation. And there's another one of those units now that's working, went into a deeper level, chip replacement level. I'm impressed that I just did the basics, one for one swap again. Swap the planer is bad, it gives me errors or whatever. I swap another planer. I can go through and address that old planer like we did, cold spray and everything else. That's not bring it back around. But it does give me some hints in the Epitronics video of what maybe I can do for the chip replacements and go through to get that original 7496 planar working, and especially and the drive. I need to go through, and he offered to fix the, to go through and recap the diskette drive, but I need to get in that and document that myself on video, so I can even fix drives on, like this small 60 that gives a general failure to read and examine what is going wrong with those. So, well, but this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you.